In this video, we are exploring one of the most complete African-themed exhibits ever made. 3 separate attractions make up 30 acres of the Dallas Zoo's Wilds of Africa region. The award-winning Giants of the Savannah, a defunct monorail that we'll get to later, but today you'll be treated to the 13-exhibit Gorilla Trail that takes you to Africa's shores, savannas, forests, rivers, and more. But before we do that, I want you to kindly hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and then I want all of you to share what is the first animal you're running towards as soon as your local zoo opens those gates. When you scan your ticket, you have 2 choices. Take a right into Zoo North, or do the right thing and walk left towards the wilds of Africa. Before you can get there though, you'll pass a very lush environment for several kinds of lemurs. You can then make a wish at the elephant fountain. If you wish to see more African creatures, it'll come true if you head under East Clarendon Drive. The tunnel is or was covered with graphics dedicated to women in the zoo workplace and iconic portraits by the Nat Geo photographer Jules Sartor. According to the 1998 map, your first stop after the bridge was the Cormorant Cove. Personally, I'd rather see that, but I know the public would much prefer African penguins. Besides all of their different personalities and this measuring graphic, the first thing that really stuck out to me was this plastic hut. A lot of penguins lay their eggs in burrows, so I knew that's what it was for. But I found it kind of funny that it was out of the penguin's reach. Well, turns out it represents actual artificial nests found in South Africa. African penguins face a bunch of threats in nature, and that includes limited places to nest. They make them out of sand, rocks, and their own poop, and people over-harvest this guano for fertilizer, forcing our tuxedo pals to nest in more vulnerable spots. The Dallas Zoo teamed up with the Dyer Island Conservation Trust to install at least 1,700 artificial nests, with hundreds more well on the way. And a study showed that 98% of these nests are or have been occupied by breeding couples. Our next creature hails from the savanna grasslands, or in this case, a rocky lagoon. Now good luck finding the cheetah. Before they replaced colorful mandrills, this exhibit's former residents, the cats had their own spot in the Giants of the Savannah down the path, along with their own running presentation exhibit in Zoo North before maned wolves took the baton. In real life, right here is where you'd walk towards the Giants of the Savannah. It's world-renowned, a first of its kind, and reserved for the next episode. The main Wilds of Africa trail draws you back in with the Gorilla Trail. That opened with a lot of what you're about to see in 1990, and it holds up so well, which I guess will happen when you can let your vegetation grow year-round for over 30 years. The zoo built a north habitat for a family troop and a reflecting south habitat just for the boys. Whether placed high or low, glass and open-fronted, doesn't matter. Every angle lets you see a good chunk of each exhibit. But that doesn't mean the gorillas can't disappear at any moment to get some privacy. In fact, the Gorilla Conservation Center was designed to minimize our interactions with the apes. It was built smack dab in the middle of the complex, so the boys can be overlooked on your left, and you can watch the family group from the comfort of a couch. You can also learn about gorilla behaviors, their threats in the wild, the 4 kinds of gorillas and where they live, and get to know every gorilla at the Dallas Zoo. And this is where I found out that I was actually reuniting with 2 long-lost friends. The Gorilla Complex won an award in 1992. I'm pretty sure Giants of the Savannah won a couple, but the zoo's peak is right here. Not really, but I just love walk-through aviaries. Even when there's this list of birds right in front of you, you still never know what you're going to see or what is about to fly over your head at any moment. The Forest Aviary gives just over 6,000 square feet to 20 species. Like I did, if you get here early enough, you might catch a personal keeper feeding with a hooded vulture. The first time, at least I think, I've seen a bird of prey in a true walk-through aviary. And for anyone who doesn't happen to be a big fan of birds, yes, you can bypass this and see everything from the outside. Now let's just say you're not a fan. Then you got some explaining to do to the Wattled Cranes, aka the tallest crane in Africa. And I finally have a shot that lets me visually explain just how tall they can get. I can't stress this enough how excited I was to see what's next, because it's been way too long since this tour group has seen the Nile Crocodile. I can talk about the differences amongst the other crocodilian types and how they're just such good parents, but I want to briefly mention their weight. Nile crocs can be 2,200 pounds, but those are like the Olympic athletes of the reptile world. For 3 years in the making, the zoo redesigned their exhibit's transfer portal that let the keepers weigh these crocs for the first time in 20 years. And the 2023 results came in, one of them weighed 490 pounds and the other 712 pounds. In 1997, the zoo added one of the best of its kind, and it probably was the best of its kind in America when it opened. The Chimpanzee Forest takes chimps to new heights, literally. The habitat is settled on a huge hillside, enclosed by some pretty visually overpowering walls, but if you ignore them, the overall landscape is perfectly suited for every primate. There's termite mounds the chimps can eat from, a bunch of climbing structures, tall trees, which I wish weren't hot-wired, but still, it's lush enough for the chimps to get lost in the forest. From the guest perspective, the viewing window is massive. Like the gorillas, there's chimp IDs, and if you're up for it, you can learn what put chimps on the endangered species list, where they live now and where they used to live, and who you can call and write to help out. If you see rock formations like these, you're probably walking into a Okapi, or Kopi, otherwise known as rocks or hills that animals of the savanna use to get away from the sun and predators. In the most narrow part of it inside the shelter is a covered up window, but thanks to a tear that I promise didn't come from me, you can still take a peek inside what is now a former exhibit, and according to the current map, it was another aviary. If a zoo has a copy exhibit, I'm willing to bet almost anything you'd find a Klipspringer. If you've never heard of that word or have seen this animal before, you're probably thinking, oh, what a cute deer. Klippies are a 20 to 40 pound, 20-inch tall to the shoulder antelope. So these two are fully grown. It doesn't look like the most comfortable environment for an antelope, but they couldn't be more adapted for life on the rocks than they already are. Their name pretty much translates to rock jumper. The center of their hooves have a rubbery structure for sticking, and they are so small they can jump and land on all 4 feet on the surface area of a silver dollar. The last of the copy, I just knew that it was a meerkat mansion immediately before I even did my research, but it's not empty. It's been taken over by a slumbering Cape porcupine. Since you're at the tallest point in the zoo, the only way to continue is if you head back downhill. It's a decent hike, but does have several stops, like a termite mound, a life-size sculpture of an ostrich, a side view of the forest aviary, and a back view of the bachelor gorilla yard. And once the trail becomes flat again, that means it's hippo time. Almost. First, you have to pass safari-style tents in Camp Okapi, a station that offers overnight programs and up-close private encounters with creatures like tamanduas, hornbills, and tortoises. There's another mixed aviary with more hooded vultures, white-backed vultures, the most common vulture species in Africa, and saddle-bill storks. At 5 feet tall and a 10-foot wingspan, they, of course, I don't even really need to say it, are one of the largest and tallest storks in the world. If you thought that was a bit misleading to have something called Camp Okapi, but have nothing to do with okapis, don't worry, they do have okapis. We've featured them a number of times before, but I still think we should feel lucky to see an animal that wasn't known to science until 1901 and is still rarely documented in the wild today. You can thank their elusive nature to the densest forests in Africa from which they're from. Now, before you say this exhibit doesn't reflect that, just wait. The Hippo Outpost saves its namesake for last. This and a couple of other surrounding features were added in 2017, which welcomed hippos back to Dallas since 2001. Like 99% of hippo exhibits in the world, it represents a riverbank and is nicely furnished with mudbank outcroppings, fallen trees, a waterfall, 2 keeper demonstration areas, and a 24 by 8 foot underwater viewing window that looks into the 120,000 gallon watering hole. I've seen quite a few people say the window seems small for a hippo-sized pool, but I like it. A smaller underwater view means that there's more chances for the animals to get away from the crowds as much as they can. I believe I saw 4 total hippos throughout the day, 1 adult pair, and a mama and her calf later on. There was just one thing missing. The media did say that red river hogs would be a part of this exhibit somehow, or mixed in with the hippos. I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments can explain. Oh yeah, there's a reason why there's more fencing above the mud wall and why there's an Okapi sign right in front of the hippos, because if you are really lucky, you might be able to see an Okapi in that forest that looks like it goes on and on and on. The final bend in the loop ends with the Wilds of Africa Plaza. You can grab a bite to eat, stop at the Wild Encounters stage, which presents at least 12 different species throughout the day. And to close out the trail is a beautiful hangout for more Shelducks, whistling ducks, pochards, and lesser flamingos. And if you're a local, this is probably where you stop and admire what once was the loading dock to the Adventure Safari monorail. A 20-minute, 1-mile-long ride around the Gorilla Trail. Yes, exactly like the Bronx Zoo, giving additional views of animals that can be seen on foot, along with 9 other represented African environments. Most of the enclosures were massive, and the species were definitely a must-see. Sadly, it was permanently closed in 2020. I did see that the monorail track was still untouched, but apparently there are ideas to replace all of it with a footpath, so fingers crossed that this actually happens. And that, my fellow zoo nerds, is where we will end things for now. But if you've been listening, you know that, again, we're not quite done with the Dallas Zoo just yet. And very soon I'll loop us back around to explore the giants of the savannah. So please stay tuned, stay wild, and thank you all for watching Zoo Tours.